Denise, I think we could get started. All right, so hello everyone. How's everybody doing today? Good, good, good. Thank you guys so much for coming to our foster parent panel event. The whole goal of us being here is really to raise awareness about what's happening. There's a lot of need, and luckily we've got some great people here to talk about exactly what their own experiences are and how they're giving back to the community and what the community really needs. So first, I would like to read a letter sent over to us by Senator Mark Warner. He could not be here today, so he just sent a letter, and I'll go ahead and start. So dear friends, I am pleased to extend my warmest greetings to all who are gathered for DePaul Community Resources Building a Community of Hope, a foster parent panel event. This event provides an important opportunity for foster care parents, providers, and Roanoke residents to come together to discuss how to best assist children in foster care. Nurturing a safe and supportive environment for a child is a deeply personal public service from which the entire Commonwealth benefits. As a United States Senator, I frequently meet young people from diverse backgrounds and personal circumstances. When I hear children share that all they really want is to be part of a family, I am reminded of the community of caring adults who are providing physical and emotional shelter for children during a challenging time in their lives. I extend my deepest appreciation for your efforts to ensure that these children have the best support that they need to grow into bright, compassionate, and successful adults. On this important occasion, I am very pleased to join with your families, friends, and community in wishing you a successful and informative event. So we just want to say thank you to Senator Mark Warner for that. And we'll go ahead and get started. First, I want to if we could actually take a moment to introduce ourselves here at the panel. So my name is 𝐤𝐢𝐝𝐬 Santos. I am a Marketing and Recruitment Manager for DePaul Community Resources.
And my name is Trista Thompson. I'm the site leader and the foster care supervisor for the Roanoke DePaul location.
My name is Terry Bobbitt. I'm a foster parent for the Roanoke office. I've been a foster parent on and off for about the last 24 years.
I'm Crystal Wade. I am a foster parent. I am with the Roanoke office as well. I just started fostering this year.
All right, and I will go ahead and actually welcome our keynote speaker, Reverend Burch. He's going to share some of his experiences, and if you want to go ahead.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It is good to be here today. I was telling someone that this is a little bit different from being behind the pulpit. Last time I shared my story, it was behind a computer screen during the pandemic. To share it in public seems to be another thing, but I'm fortunate and grateful that I could be here. I'm thankful for DePaul and connecting with persons like Emily, and I've been in contact with 𝐤𝐢𝐝𝐬 and starting to meet other staff from DePaul as well. I thank you all for having me here. Could have chose anybody else, but you thought enough of me to be here, and I'm internally grateful for that. Building a community of hope. I was born in Washington, D.C. I'm not a Roanoke native, but I've been in Roanoke long enough that everybody in Roanoke says, "We claim you now." But I was born in Washington, D.C., 1982 in Providence Hospital. That's where my humble beginnings began. I don't know all the details of what my biological parents went through. I don't know all the details of why my story began on a hotel balcony found by the hotel staff. I don't know all the details, at least the dirty details, of why my brothers and I were abandoned. But that's how my life started. My life started on that hotel balcony, and then we were filtered into an orphanage called St. Anne's. I joke with people often because I says, I know what it means to have a hard knock life, and sing that song so joyfully and jokingly. But at the age of 2 or 3, my brothers and I were in orphanage at St. Anne's in Hyattsville, Maryland. And what was fascinating about my first memory there was during Christmas time. I remember the snow, I remember the Christmas tree, and I remember Santa Claus coming in with a big old sack and pulled out a yellow dump truck. It was then, I didn't know it at that time, but it's now I realize that as a foster child, it just seemed like all of my hopes and dreams at that time were put into the dump truck bed, and it felt like I was dumped off somewhere and couldn't have the real connections that I wanted. Eventually, we entered in the foster care system, and we had some awesome parents. And I'm going to tell you this, when I entered the foster care system, roughly about the age of 4, I didn't know I was in foster care. I want you to hold on to that, because in that foster home, not once, and that was the late Susie and James Johnson, not once did they refer to us as foster children. Not once did they refer to us as a foster son, but in public and in private space, they said, these are our sons. These are our children. These are children that are part of the community and not children that are just separated or different. And so that was something I appreciated during my foster care journey, because up until that point, I didn't realize I was in foster care until one day in elementary school, one of my classmates said, "Sean, why are your parents so much older than you?" And I shrugged my shoulders and I said, "I don't know. I just know they're my parents." And then another child said, "Well, I heard that you were in foster care and you were sold on the platform." And I said, "Where are you getting all this information from?" One day I had to have that brave conversation with my foster parents. And I asked them, "Are you really my parents?" And we sat down for the longest time. I thought the visits from another person that was just coming into the household was a friend of the family, until I realized it was a social worker, or at least I was told that it was a social worker. All these dynamics seemed like my world was turned upside down. Abandoned, orphaned, trying to figure out now, roughly in the 4th grade, how am I going to navigate through life being this kid in the foster care system. My experience in my first home, it was a pretty good experience, but I didn't stay in my first placement forever. Between the abandonment issues, between the trauma that I had to relive, between the various memories that came up, I had some tough roads and some hills and mountains to climb. But I'm grateful for those moments, because it challenged me to be a better person, not only for myself, but for anybody that I come in contact with. That to be rejected and abandoned is a feeling that I don't want no other child to feel. And so trying to process and journey and go and sort out those feelings was tough for me. And as a child, yes, I was depressed. Yes, I was anxious. I even feel nervous to even tell you that I had so many low points that I tried to end my life on multiple occasions. But here I am. I journeyed. I'm here. How did I do it? How did I get here? Did I have some type of magic wand? No. I had a community that supported me and the foster homes that I was in. Whether that's the church, whether that's the local recreation center, whether that was just a neighbor 2 houses down the street. There were people that stepped up to the plate to help my brothers and I when we were in a very vulnerable moment in our lives. I'll be the first one to tell you that just this past Wednesday, I turned 40 years old. I have been in the foster care system for almost 19 to 20 years. That's nearly half my life, or just about half my life. Like I said, I've had some high moments and I've had some low moments. But I'm here now because there was a community that stood behind me, people to still push me to be better, do better, taught me that I can bounce back from my troubles and be able to give back. My story is not so uncommon like any other foster child that's trying to navigate and make it and feel connected and feel like they belong with those in the community. And in my low moments, in those depressive moments, trying to understand why did my parents abandon me, I looked on the brighter side and saw the reality that I am somebody, and that even though I don't fully understand the why, all I know is that I have value. And every foster child has value. They have the potential to be powerful contributors to society. They have the potential to give back to those. And so I reflected on a book years ago when I was in seminary that helped me in my foster care journey. And it was called Images of Pastoral Care by Robert Dykstra. In his book, he talks about how we can revise our past, but in order to revise it, we have to revisit it. Throughout my years in foster care, when I revisited my past, it was always a painful experience. I will be the first to admit right now that I was nervous, anxious to even share difficult moments of my life, to even share that I was a foster child. But now today, even after reading various sources, I learned that I don't have to have this major conflict with my past, that I don't have to look at my past as something to run away from or something that I should be ashamed of. And what I learned from Robert Dykstra's perspective is that when we revisit our past, that you can use your past to become a living document or a resource for solutions. And so today, as someone who navigated through the foster care system, thought I was a nobody, thought I was just somebody's trash, had to go to this place and that place with trash bags to carry my belongings. I remember one time when my stuff was stolen from the foster care agency. My memories, pictures. But I also remember continuing to push and press forward because it was in my history that became a powerful resource to find solutions. And so over the past 2 years, I sat down in my faith tradition, had a little talk with God. And I said, how can I use my story, my experiences to be solutions? I did some research. And then that's when Suitcases with Hope came up to provide suitcases for foster children that are in care. I realized that my story is not damaging, nor was I damaged goods. But I am a living document, a resource to where I can go through my past and find solutions to problems today. But I know that I can't do that by myself. I know that if we are going to help out our foster children, parents, foster community, then we have to do it together. I'll close with this because I think this surmised my journey so much. It was just yesterday. I was running my after-school program in Roanoke City. And it was a little girl that came up to me and said, Mr. Burch, can you hold my hand? Now, for me, I looked at her, I said, are you sure you want to hold Mr. Burch's hand? She said, Mr. Burch just smiled and said, can you please hold my hand while we're just walking down the hallway? So I held her hand. And that made me think about those moments that for all the rough moments in foster care, there were good foster parents that held my hand. There were good people in the community that held my hand. And here I am at the age of 40, reciprocating that same action towards me to a little girl or a little boy or a teenager or an adult, holding each other's hands as we're navigating through life together, building bridges and connections. In the real sense, for foster care, if we all continue to hold each other's hands, we can build the bridges that we need to help children just like me that are navigating through the system now. I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think there's a moment, if you have any questions to ask me, I would love to answer anything that you have.
A lot of our foster children in the Roanoke Valley are spending nights in Department of Social Services offices, residential treatment facilities. I'm curious what you think your journey would have looked like had you not had loving homes from this past.
I remember when I was getting ready to go to college, I stayed at a group home facility because I had nowhere else to go, no other foster home to go to. But to answer your question, I really do believe that, especially growing up in the 80s and the 90s, there were times where I almost slipped and gave into the wrong crowds. And I am not ashamed to say that, it could have landed me in jail or 6 feet underground, to be honest. For the loving homes that I did get to enter into, it saved me from some potential disaster. And that's why I do believe that it's so important for adults, loving adult homes, people to step up, be foster parents. And if you're not at a place or space right now to be a foster parent, there are other ways to help out foster children through mentorship and other programs and resources their way. But I'll tell you, if I never had some of the homes I did, and I'm glad I started out in my first foster home in 𝐤𝐤𝐝𝐿, Maryland, because that home was full of structure. And if I didn't have that structure and that love, I would be, like I said, 6 feet underground or possibly in the justice system even now as an adult.
I have a question. Can you elaborate on the foster homes that you were in that you felt the most safe and comfortable with? What were some things that they did well that made you feel that way?
All right. Well, the first foster home I mentioned, that's James Johnson and Susie Johnson. That was the first foster home I was in 𝐤𝐤𝐝𝐿, Maryland. Like I said, the very first thing that stood out to me the most was the fact that they never identified me as a foster child. And that's huge for any child in the foster care system, because one of the biggest things I hear, and then just from my own experience, is wanting to belong. The fact that, and that I could share, is that in that home, they made me feel like I belonged. There was another home, C English. Now, he was a Muslim. So I've been through different homes, different faith traditions, different cultures, and I felt safe in his home because he was an encourager. And that was more of a therapeutic setting, and that was his background. And so I do see a greater sense to have a therapeutic setting for most children. And at that time in my life, for me, I needed that with the depression and the anxiety that I had to deal with. But it was safe for me because he was always honest, but he also pushed me to be better than whatever I thought I was. I just thought that I wasn't deserving of life. I thought that I wasn't deserving to have real connections with people. And in that household, besides the Johnsons, he really made me feel connected and how to be more sociable in the community. The other foster homes, they were hit and miss. I mean, and many of you know that every placement is not permanent. I might be there for a week. Next week, I'm in a different home. I've had a total of 6 or 7 placements in my lifetime, but those were the 2 households that resonated well with me, and made me feel safe. And I do believe too, and I have to stress this, is that they gave me a voice, and didn't shut me up or shut me down. Valued my voice, valued my opinions, and talked to me like I was a human being, and asked me, what do you want from us, and how can we help you achieve your goals?
During your transitioning through the various foster homes, were there any adoptive or adoption opportunities for you or your brothers at any time?
To my knowledge, no. And so, which is, it's interesting because I thought my first foster home was going to be this is it, my forever home. You know, for me as a foster, I mean, every foster child, even at the age of 40, I know that every foster child is looking for that permanent forever home. And I thought my first placement was it. But circumstances arose, and a lot of it, I have to take responsibility on my part, because I felt like I let my personal issues get in the way of potentially staying, because it's unheard of for a foster child to be, because I was in that home from the age of 4 all the way to about 13 or 14. So that is very unusual. And I thought that this could be it. But life happens. And I'm going to tell you that every foster child is not perfect. I was not perfect. But when you have good people willing to still push you, miracles can happen, honestly. Would not be here if people didn't keep pushing me and keep on believing. After I left my first foster home, an adoptive situation didn't seem, and by that time I was a teenager. So even as a teenager in foster care, I knew the research, I knew the stats. It was unlikely that I would have a permanent home.
And when you reached 18, and you were still, I guess, independent when you were 18?
Well, that's a good question. When I was 18, I was actually still in the foster care system in D.C. I was going to school at the time, so I was eligible to remain in care until 21. And so that's why such a 19, 20 years being in the system. So I took advantage of that. I mean, I would have been crazy not to. Plus, I will admit that school became a second home to me. And I did anything to stay in school. I begged them in D.C. I said, can I go to summer school, please? And they said, do you like school that much? And I did, but also I felt like I was discovering my identity, and I started to feel like I was creating my own space, my own safe space as well. I will say that 18 through 21, at that time, I just think that there could have been more life skills available to me. And I did take advantage of some, but I felt like it was too late. Like the resources that existed, we didn't know about until it was too late. But then on the other hand, I know one foster family I was with, I mean, they sheltered and shielded us. And so in DC, I had to learn how to use the transit system. The social worker begged and said, look, you're going to have to, let go. And so I would encourage anybody to help foster children, develop to even navigate through the city or receive life skills that's critical, that I felt like I learned later on in life that I should have been learning at the age of 15, to be honest.
Yeah, Miles, we're both CASAs for Bedford County, Court Appointed Special Advocate. So I see a lot of children in foster homes. I haven't been doing this 6 or 7 years, but I've noticed that with the Fostering Futures programs and things like that, that's helping some of the older foster care children to get independent living, to get life skills. So I'm glad to see how you mentioned that would have been important for you.
Oh, absolutely. And I was blessed and fortunate to hear about programs like that, foster futuring, and that's just something that wasn't fully explored or existed when I was coming up. Do I believe that more critical investments could be made into programs like that? Absolutely. I feel like I have a leg to stand on in that area, even now, because I just believe that foster children, with the right investments, can not only be productive citizens in society, but I mean can help us to do some incredible things within our own communities. And I just feel like I'm a living witness of that, to turn my pain into greater possibilities. Any other questions?
I have one more.
Okay.
Since we're talking about gaps around independent living, with your experience, did you see any other gaps that you think that foster parents or helping professionals that we can all work together to help fill those gaps so we can make a more whole child that might be leaving the system?
Okay. We might.
Did I open Pandora's
Yes,
box?
you did. Yes. Because I'm working on a lot of stuff. I think about a lot of stuff. But like I mentioned before, when I reflected over my life and using some of Robert Dijkstra's techniques of revisiting and revising the past, those gaps, like I said, and I don't know how it is. I think it's, I would say mentorship is a huge gap. And I don't feel like that burden should be on the foster care system alone. I just don't believe that should be it. But I do believe that maybe the system, social workers can tap into other resources, other organizations that could provide mentorship. And sometimes I remember one experience when I was, I think I was about 19 years old, but I was in one foster home that I did come to during the summertime, and their names were the Spivaks. And that was a white couple that took me in, and I had a Hispanic foster sister. So, but still, it was just like with the African American culture and perspective, I still wanted to have that identity, and they did everything. I mean, and I forgot to mention it, but they did everything to make me feel comfortable, and they were trying to identify, but other ways that even foster parents of other races can be open to resources or other organizations that can help them to better identify with the child. Mentorship is crucial, and I think one huge gap. The life skills is another critical gap. And then, and maybe we have a different discussion about this, but other educational opportunities as well. I remember in DC where there were opportunities for foster children within ages 18 to 21 to either pick up, go through a special program to learn a different trade or even go into accounting and things of that nature. It wouldn't be a bad idea to start targeting job skills at the age of 14, the moment that they get into high school. I would even say that there would be an argument. I remember volunteering as early as 12 and 13 at a local community center working at the swimming pool. I was so proud at that point because I learned how to put together a vacuum cleaner, but I worked at a swimming pool. So, but hey, that's what they wanted me to do. So I think learning, I just think the gaps of just learning more skills, learning how to invest. And I'm just trying to think about today's environment compared to the things I was missing. But at the top of my list would be mentorship for sure. Any other questions?
Do you think your journey would have been different if you had a relative that would have took you in versus you went into the system?
I think my journey would have been different. How? I'll be honest, I don't know. As I'm getting to know my birth family continuously over the years, a lot of them seem to be very loving. They come off very loving. I try to learn about them in different ways. But I know it would have been different. Would I be here doing things like this? Would I be adamant about giving back to the foster care system? Like I said, there's other parts of my family's past, my biological family's past, that wasn't pretty. And so I could think about the potential things that I could have gotten into, especially if I was still around my biological father, and so forth. What I know about him, he was he had his issues, but I just know he was very abusive too. I could have turned out to be an abusive man. So I just think that literally things happen for a reason. And I'm glad that I'm not an abusive person. I'm glad that I try to be loving and caring, and be the person that I believe our community and our society needs. Yeah.
How is your relationships? Do you have relationships with your brothers, and how does that help? How have you maintained it? Is it helped you maintain it?
So that's a great question. When I entered the foster care system, I entered the foster care system with two of my brothers, and they were younger than me. And so once again, it was really uncommon for siblings to stay together as long as we did. We eventually were split up, and I think that's where a lot of the difficulty, hit us hard, because we weren't able to see each other as much. We had our own issues. I think there was a time where there was some disconnection, but we tried to make it work. Today, we try to keep in contact with one another. Throughout this journey, I did find out I had other siblings. When I thought there was only 3 of us, there's almost 7, 8 of us out here. So I have met our other siblings or talked to them. There's some other siblings that I have not talked to. But for the siblings that I have talked to, that I didn't grow up with, it's interesting because it's almost like a fresh start with them. Like, we get to know each other. We didn't grow up together, but we had that opportunity to learn each other, and planning trips to meet each other's families soon as well. The brothers I grew up with, they have their own individual journeys. I will say that. They have their difficulties, and they navigate through life the best way that they can. But as the older brother, and I will always look at myself as the older brother in that sense, that I do my best to still try to let them know that I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, and I'm going to stand with you. I remember talking to one of my younger brothers, Joshua, and he was having a hard time, and I'm not going to put all his business out there, but what I will say is this. He said, "Sean, I was ashamed to even contact you." I said, "Brother of mine, never be ashamed. I don't have a heaven or hell to put you in. I love you, and that never changes." And that's one thing that I think every foster care child needs to hear. Just not my siblings, that a foster care child needs to hear somebody authentically tell them that not only are they valuable, but I love you. And I want you here, and I'm always going to be here for you. Any other questions?
Did you keep in contact with your foster parents after you left the foster?
That's a good question. I did. My first foster home that I was removed from, we did keep in contact. Now, at first I was bitter and angry because, oh no, I can't stay there anymore. But I did keep in contact with them all the way up until they passed away about 6 to 7 years ago. Because for me, they were my parents. I had the longest time with them, the longest connection. That's where my core values came from. I still keep in contact with him. He's a cool cat, and that's how he would like to be phrased. He lives in Florida now. If you ever get a chance to talk to C, he's a great guy, and he has done a lot in the foster care system as well. But I still keep in contact with C. He was very big about me pushing to get the education that I needed. He made that strong impression on me. Also, his former wife, Debbie, I still try to keep in contact with her. But the other foster parents, no. And there were reasons for that. But it is possible that foster children will still have those connection, and I would dare to say familyship with their foster families, because I feel like that never goes away. That's too much history to just put to the side and act like it never happened. And so when my first foster, I paid them visits frequently. I even introduced them to the woman I proposed to. And I remember my foster dad, he looked me in my eye. Well, I say my dad, he looked me in my eye and said, "You take care of her." I knew what that meant. She's the right one, and you take care of her. Still giving me guidance and advice, even though I wasn't living in the home with him. And I remember my foster mom, or my mom, Susie Johnson, because I saw them one day I think they were going to the store, and I was riding through and I was just taking metro connections. They said, "Do you want a ride?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And so I got a ride. And said, "Anything else we could do for you?" I said, "No, I got it. I got it." And she had tears in her eyes. She was like, "Well, make sure you still don't forget about us." I said, "I won't, because you always have been a big part of my life." And they were there with me when I had nobody, and I was there for them as a son, not a foster son. I was there for them as a son. When they passed away, and I was there for them as a son at their funeral. Those are the type of connections that I hope that the foster community can make when it comes down to it.
You mentioned something. You said when you were removed from the home. If you look back on when you were in foster care, is there anything you think the service could have been provided for you, or things that may have changed something where you could have stayed in one of those homes and been an adopted location?
Ooh, that's a good question, because I do revisit that often. I revisit it like it's yesterday, and the pretty answer would be, if I could have, if I just could have not been depressed, it would have been better. Maybe tell somebody that I was hurting. And I think many of you know that foster children bottle up a lot of things, and I was no exception. If there was one thing I could have done differently, and I think that would have just changed my life, would have been having that voice. Because I felt like I didn't have a voice to even tell somebody I was in that much pain. And that was right around the time that one of my brothers got removed from the home. And that was just seemed like a source of abandonment and just a part of me just being taken away.
You needed a casa.
Yes, and you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that, because I believe that advocates like CASA and having those connections in the home would have helped me out a lot. So when I heard about CASA over the past couple of years, I was fascinated by it, because to my knowledge, I did not have I had a guardian of life in the foster care system, a lawyer, but I only saw him when we went to court. And that it wasn't personal at all. It just seemed like it was just strictly business. Foster children are not, foster children are kids too. They just want to feel like kids. They want to feel like normal people. My journey, there are just a lot of times I felt abnormal, but I do believe advocates like a CASA advocate can help to amplify the child's voice as well in many situations.
And one thing we've noticed being CASAs, in where we're at in Bedford, there's not many African Americans. There's not many African American foster parents, and they struggle to try to go back to culture. They struggle to get them with the right knit so they know what the culture is. And even when it comes down to braiding hair and things of that nature, and you gotta kind of go through those motions. But one thing that, and about being a CASA, we deal with a lot of foster care, and here lately, all my cases pretty much been children going through foster care, return home to family if you can, and things of that nature. But I stay abreast of your story. I'm hearing today for the first time. I know what the suitcases are about, and then you have to see a child go from place to place with all their belongings, and just, you're talking depressing in a green plastic bag. That's depressing in itself. But my hat's off to you all, and also to DePaul and everybody, and the foster care parents and those, because it is needed. This room should be filled, in all honesty.
And something was said in that, to go back to Trista, and you mentioned something, go back there, you talk about gaps, and it makes me think about this. Last week I spoke with my biological grandmother, and for the first time I had heard where she was like, there was a point where we wanted to try to fight for you, and have you in our home. And there is that gap where there are some kids who want to be reunified with their families. And if reunification is possible, you know, I've always thought, are there resources out there to help the parents or help the family member who wants to step up? I think it's called kinship care. And so to at least reunify the child with their actual family, it might just be with somebody else instead of their parents, but at least that will help some, because some kids want to go, and then there are some kids that will not go back to their house, and we have to listen to them, because that's their lived experience, and if they feel unsafe in their biological family, we have to listen to that as well, and that is real. But I would say reunification, because I talked to a foster parent about a couple of months ago, because, you know, I'm diving into doing more investigation, and that was something that this particular foster parent said that should be, I think should be more advocacy for as well, for kids that want to be reunified with their families. So, still learning, still growing, but I'm just blessed and fortunate to be in a time and a place like this to try to help out the best way I can and continue to learn and get in the right spaces to do the right things for foster children and also foster parents. And I think you guys are rock stars. You know, first year, 24 years. And so I salute you both as well, and they're all other foster parents that get into this work. So, because it's a ministry on its own. Any other questions? If not, thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Again, thank you, Reverend Burch, for sharing your story and answering those questions. That was really insightful, and we appreciate you sharing. So now, it's been a minute, so I'm going to have our foster parents reintroduce themselves to you guys, and then share one interesting fact about their family, and then we'll get to the structured panel questions.
My name is Terry Bobbitt. I've been a foster parent on and off for 24 years. This is my 12th year with DePaul's. I've now fostered, this is counting short-term care and everything, I've now had over 100 and some children in and out of my home over the years. And my very first adoption was a sibling group from Alaska.
I'm Crystal Wade. This is my first year. I have a 9-year-old. We recently got our first placement, and we have a 9-year-old and a 10-year-old in our home. And what's interesting about that is that they all get along, usually, for the most part. And it's like they came into our home and like they've lived there forever. We didn't have to do a lot of, you know, trying to butter them up. When they like came in, they felt right at home. They were like, "Hey, so where are we sleeping?" Like, and it was great. It was a relief for me because, like I said, it was my first time having them or having kids, period, come in. So it was great. It was great for everybody. It wasn't a stressful situation. So yeah, I was very grateful.
All right, first question. Why did you decide to become a foster parent, and then why did you choose DePaul?
I have always wanted to do foster care. Me and my mom had went out to eat, and we had saw one of her friends, and they were talking about how they had did foster care, and I was like, you know, that's something I really want to get into, and they mentioned DePaul to me. So I just started doing research and filled out the questionnaire online. They got back to me quickly. The process was smooth. They kept in constant contact. I never felt like I had to keep calling or keep asking them questions and things like that. The information was rolling in. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Thank you. Terry?
My foster care journey started, I drive a school bus for Bedford County Public Schools, and and one of my high school students was in foster care and needed a foster care placement, so he asked me to be his foster parent. So I fostered locally through Bedford DSS for years, adopted a sibling group. Working with that sibling group, it was a large sibling group. So some of their siblings had trouble finding placements, so they came with DePaul's, and I became friends with the DePaul's worker over the years. And then I kind of took a little break as I've adopted. My house kind of filled up. And so the DePaul's worker reached out to me. She goes, "Are you ready to come back and foster again? You come see me, talk to me. You know, we want you on our team." And so that's how I came to work for DePaul's.
Terry, can you share for the people who aren't really aware, can you share the difference between working for a local department as a foster parent as compared to being a foster parent through DePaul? What's the main differences that you see?
The main difference is the support you have. You have somebody on call 24/7. There's always somebody there to help you. Social workers do their best to help you, but they have a large caseload. They travel all over the state, dealing with the other children that they have on their caseload. So sometimes you call a social worker, and it could be days, sometimes a week before you get a phone call back. You call your DePaul's worker. If you get their voicemail within just no time, you're either getting a text message back or a phone call back. And if the worker is tied up, then a lot of times you'll receive a call from Trista or somebody because the worker's tied up. So there's always somebody there to depend on and help you through any situation.
Thank you. All right, second question. How does your family prepare for a foster placement, and what advice would you give other families to help make a child feel comfortable in a new place?
So for my home, I had to prepare my son first. That was the first step, and I encourage other people who have other children in the home, that should be your first step, just so you can know where their mind is going to be with everything, because it is a change. And even with preparing my son and talking with him, I still feel like in the beginning it was like a shock. I think one shock was, and it wasn't a huge shock because we live in Ferrum, where it is predominantly white people or Caucasian Americans. And our two kids that we have, they are white. And so I know that that's everybody's big thing. It's like, oh my goodness, how'd you prepare? And we're like, this is what we see. We're fine. We're fine here. This is who's at his school. These are like friends coming over. We're fine. But just the fact of it being two additional people in the home, whereas normally he's the ruler of upstairs, I'm the ruler of downstairs. That's just how it's always been. So just preparing the other kids in the household, making sure that your meds are somewhere secure, your Clorox and bleach and things like that are put in a separate space and it's secure. And labels, I labeled everything. I labeled where the fruits go, I labeled where the forks and spoons are, I labeled where the cups are, because I wanted to come second nature where they're just opening up and becoming more comfortable with where things are. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What about you, Terry?
My house is a little different. I think we have to prepare the children coming into my home, because all of my children that are in my home are previous foster children or still in foster care. So it's like you're getting a new puppy. They're all excited. The kids come in, they want to greet them, they want to hug them, show them around everything, and sometimes that's a little overwhelming. And I have to remind my children, step back, let them have space. This isn't your friend just coming by to visit. This is somebody that's moving in. We don't want to overwhelm them in the beginning. And sometimes the new kids do get a little overwhelmed with just the amount of attention they get the very first week or so that they're there.
I can agree, because there's always a welcoming committee when I come to Terry's home. All right, because foster care is a temporary situation, foster families are often called upon to help the child maintain connections with their family of origin. How have you navigated birth family involvement in keeping kids in your care connected with their birth family?
I can say for me, it's been great having the DePaul worker. I do work full time, so as far as with the mom for my two, we'll do like an alternating week, me and the DePaul worker, and I got to pick the day that I'm off from work, and it works out great, having that support and them spending time with their mom, and then I kind of get an hour, and me and my kid will go do something else, so we're not interfering in their space during their time. So yeah.
What about phone calls, Crystal? Are you guys doing phone calls, and what does that look like?
So for phone calls, we'll do phone calls, and I'll have the phone on speakerphone, so I can kind of hear what's going on. We also use Google Duo, so that seems to help a lot. Like last night, for example, we were at the bowling alley, so they're like, "Oh, look, we're shooting pool," or "We're bowling," or "Look, he's playing a game," or and then I look over and Mom's like, she's always upbeat when talking to them. She's like, "Oh, that's cool," so it's kind of like them bringing her along for a few minutes to enjoy their day. So.
What about you, Terry?
I guess I go a little to the extreme with the bio families because I've made a lot of great friends this way. The sibling group that I took in, their biological mom ended up homeless and actually lived with my parents for 6 months. I've had bio families go on vacation with us. They spend holidays with us. Just included them. I always tell the bio families when I first meet them, they're very nervous. They're looking at me almost like I'm the enemy at first, and they're nervous. And I always tell them, I don't judge. Their kids are in care because of mistakes, and once you learn the stories of the bio families, you realize they have trauma too. Something happened in their life. No one has these kids thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna have kids so they'd be put in foster care." And so the parents knowing that you're not judging them and that you really do love their kids, you create a bond, and they just become part of the family.
Thank you, Terry. What type of support have you received as a foster parent to help you best care for the children in your home?
So as I mentioned, our DePaul worker, she'll come and sit and do some of the visits with Mom. Also the social worker, she'll help and kind of monitor some of the visits as well. Just coming out and checking on the kids for me is a lot because even with that, like they'll run to the door, they'll say, "Oh, Rachel's coming today." And so sometimes she'll bring like toy trucks or things like that for them. So they love seeing her. And it also, she's kind of like their voice behind the scenes if there's something that maybe they don't want me to know, which with my two, they'll let me know. But just in case, if ever there's something, they'll let her know, and she'll be sure to let me know. But just the support so that they feel supported is a huge thing for me.
And for me, just the workers they become part of the family too. The kids look forward to seeing their case managers come by the house. The case manager is very supportive with school, any appointments that may come up that I'm not available to take the kids to. Emma's always there anytime I need her. She comes over, the kids are always excited. Google Calendar is my best friend, so we have like the Echo show and everything, so the kids get to see my calendar for the day. So whenever they see DePaul's on there, they know they're having a visit, and they get excited about the worker coming over. They have her outside playing football and baseball and running around the yard, so they keep her on her toes, and she's happy to see the kids, and it's just like it's a friend or an older sister coming by to visit, and they're always happy to talk to her.
Another form of support that we offer, I think, that is really beneficial is our training program. And that starts from pre-service, which is the introduction to foster care, ongoing. Can you guys, either one of you, share your experience when it comes to training and the support that you receive from participating in that?
For me, I think pre-service was very, very helpful. It did change my mindset on a few things. I know when I first started, it was, okay, so I'm going to get these kids and they're going to be all mine. Whereas it's like, okay, kinda, a third of yours. And that's fine because that's where all that other support comes in. So, you know, the bio parents, they get to say so. DePaul worker gets to say so. You know, everybody's in this together. And it makes it, once you have a placement, it makes it less stressful because, you know, you have people to talk to, people to go to, just to hear other people's point of view when making certain decisions. So,
And
yeah.
with training too, you make friends with the other foster parents, and that's another resource you have is the other families, and just the ongoing training. Even though I've been doing this all these years, sometimes it's just nice to have a reminder on certain things that you after, oh yeah, I knew that, but you just kind of, you get into a routine and you just kind of forget things, and just having that reminder and knowing where the resources are for the help if you need it is great.
Thank you. You guys are doing great. This is our last question for the structured questions. What is one foster care myth you would like to bust, or any advice to prospective foster families that you'd like to give?
So I actually Googled this, and I was like, I don't know, what do people say? So one thing that popped up was that I guess some people feel like you can't be single. So I am single. I was a single mother before. I work full-time. That's another one that popped up. You can't work full-time. I work full-time. I also run a business. So I do all those things, and there's still time. There's still time. I am very fortunate enough, you know, the kids, we spend a lot of time together. A lot of time. My job is flexible. But yeah, all those things are myths. It can be done.
I guess one of the biggest myths is that teenagers are difficult. They're horrible. They're going to disrupt your entire life. I foster mainly teenagers, and I'm telling you, the teenagers are a lot easier to handle than the little ones. And the other one, I'm a single parent too. When people find out you're a foster parent, I know people think they're being encouraging, but to get the pat on the back saying, "Oh, you must be a saint. Oh, you're just amazing. I couldn't do that." That drives a foster parent crazy, because anybody that has a heart can be a parent.
Mm-hmm.
If you can be a parent, you can be a foster parent.
That's awesome, Terry. I love that.
Me too.
Is there any advice for prospective foster families that you would like to give? Just one little nugget you'd like to share?
Go for it. Try it. The goal is to help. You won't get it all right. There's people to help you. But yeah.
These kids just need us. If you have the space in your home, contact DePaul's, see what the program's about, try it out, start doing, maybe short-term care just to see if it's something you would consider doing a long-term placement. But these kids, they're great kids. They need homes, and we've all got to work together to make sure they find their forever home or work with them to return them to their biological homes.
All right, that is all the structured questions that I have. Do you guys have any questions for the panelists?
said you've been in, what, 20-plus years now?
Yes.
And this goes back, and I guess, now you work through with DePaul, let me ask, DePaul contracts to social services, would that be right, or, and then, now does the social worker, I hear you talking about caseworkers, does the social workers also come in, or is DePaul acting as a social worker in that case?
Do you guys want me to answer that?
Go ahead.
Okay. So when children come into foster care, of course, they come in through a local Department of Social Services. So they'll have their local social worker. And if the child is placed through a DePaul home, they'll also have a DePaul social worker. So they see our workers a little more frequently. Our caseloads are smaller, so we can do more therapeutic interventions. But they also have their DePaul or their DSS, which is their legal guardian.
Have any, either of you, and I know you haven't been in it very long, have any of you all ever thought about being at forever home, in your case, given an adopted location?
I have 9 adopted children now, and I have 2 teenagers that here, hopefully the next month or year will be added to my family too.
Do you find that the same resources that are offered for foster parents are needed for adoptive parents when that time comes?
For the most part, up until, that is one thing, when the children are adopted, you do lose a lot of support. DePaul does offer after, care for you, but, over time, social workers disappear, case managers disappear, and those children are, in the eyes of the law and God, they're yours. And, you have to do everything for them. And that's when, I've had some children that have had some severe struggles as they've got older. And, I've had to reach out, actually to my local Department of Social Services, because I had a child that just needed more help than, I could give. And finally, we were able to get him the medical help that he needed. But it is more of a struggle when, with that paper signed, they're yours, and it's up to you to find those resources then.
How did you first learn about foster care?
Me? So when I was in high school, I had friends who were in foster care, so that was my first time. And then we were sitting down, we were having lunch one day with me and my mom, and so then some of her friends who do fostering, they had mentioned it to me, and I was like, that's not a bad idea, because it was just me and my little boy at the time. So, yeah.
And I do like it, and believe me, if you had not said it, it's just another case in point where you have two white children in your home, and that goes back to the fostering children, and I know Firm is very rural.
Yes.
I know I live in Manila, so and being that said that, how do you go about learning? You grew up African American. How do you go about learning what those children need? Because there are different things. How do you go about doing that in that process?
They teach me.
Okay.
They are very, very vocal.
They are.
Very vocal. And so it's nothing. It's like we're in the car and it's like, hey, can you play a song? I'm like, sure, let's go. I talk to Siri. Siri plays the song. And that's how it started. Then we went to the barbershop. And I had called the DePaul worker and I was like, we need haircuts. And she's like, just give me some time, I'm reaching out. And then I tell her again, I'm like, we need haircuts. So we go to the barbershop, and so, he's cutting, and they're like, oh yeah, I like this. And then the next morning, it's like, whoa, what happened? And the hair's like, and I was like, no. So I have to go to the store, I have to buy mousse, I'm reading on the back of the labels. So it's learning, it's figuring it out, it's Google, and it's them teaching me.
And I applaud that. That is so awesome that you can do, because black, white, green, or purple, they're kids. I have a Caucasian who had taken an African American child, and she called me like at 10 o'clock at night, and she's like, you know, I did something. I can't comb his hair, I can't do anything, I did something wrong. What do I need to do? I'm like, okay, go buy this product, and get this product, and you'll be okay. So it's applauding, it's wonderful to hear that from you all, that you're letting the children teach you. I mean, that is just awesome, because so many times that's not the case, so that is just awesome. Good job, I really applaud you, both of you.
And my children are, some of my children are from Alaska, so my children are 𝐤𝐤𝐝𝐿 Eskimos. So it was a major issue trying to find either heritage and teach them about it. We were watching TV one day, TV was on, and it actually was Oprah, and somebody was telling Oprah about 𝐤𝐤𝐝𝐿. And one of my oldest, he's like, oh my God, I want some 𝐤𝐤𝐝𝐿. And I was like, well, what is 𝐤𝐤𝐝𝐿? I was like, I've never heard of it. Well, it's bloody whale. Yeah, so he was talking about how delicious it is. So he still has older adult siblings that still live. My children come from Barrow, Alaska, so which is the tip-top part of Alaska. So their sister actually sent food to them. I couldn't do it. I couldn't try it. They loved it. I couldn't do it. So, but keeping up with culture is very important.
I have to say, one of my earliest memories of Trista is I walked in one evening and she was doing a training for our foster families on how to care for black hair. And so I think DePaul makes an extra effort as well to help families bridge some of those gaps that we have in our lived experience versus the children in the home.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, I think that there's been times where foster families have said no because they don't feel comfortable. Like, how do I do that child's hair? Well, we can teach you that. All you have to do is love them. We can work with the other stuff. Those are small things. So you shouldn't let anything culturally, if you're open, stop you from taking in a child that might be a little different from yourself.
How do you create or establish circle supports, whether I don't know if you have like a faith community or in your friend circle, like to help you and support you as possibly able to?
Family is a big support. Just neighbors. I have 2 teenagers that I'm fostering now. My next door neighbors just adore them, and actually asked the kids the other day, like, we know we're not related to you, but we'd like to be your adoptive grandparents. And so that they take the kids out to eat and different things, and so it takes a community to do this. School support, churches. There's just you just have to reach out and have the people in your life. But DePaul's is a huge support for all of us.
I know, I'm glad he brought up school support. That is very, very necessary, especially if you have kids who may be ADHD or have IEPs, things like that. I don't think I've ever been so connected with the school secretary ever, but now we're on a first name basis and it's great. And then because if there's like a worker coming to pick them up, it's a quick email. Hey, such and such is coming. Okay, it's constant contact. Family, work. So sometimes they'll come to my job. We can go to the fitness center. They can play ball. They have a huge open area. We have a huge yard, but at the college it's huge. So they can run around. They can play. So they are their support. Other people that are around, they're in their circle. It's like even a simple, hey, what's up? How's it going, guys? Goes a long way with them because they're nonstop talkers. They love it. They love attention. It's great. And it means a lot to them if they're recognized, especially their names are very memorable. So they're like, hey, such and such. And they're like, oh, well, hey, you want to go outside and play? And these are college students, some of them. It's like, yeah, let's go. But that is their support.
questions? I have a question for both of you. From the moment that you decided to become a foster parent until your first placement, like how long did that take for you?
With social services, it wasn't, after I got certified, it was just a few weeks, and I think it was pretty much with DePaul's too. It was just like a week or so later that I got the call for my first placement, so it was a very short amount of time. But actually this, because I did take a break, so the second time I came back for DePaul's, I got referrals. Trista called me a couple times, and they just didn't work out. So it was a little bit more of an extended period the second time.
It wasn't a long period of time for me. I know, my first location where I had lived at before, it had gotten approved, and then we moved closer to my job, plus the place was bigger. So maybe it was 8 months or so, but once everything on my end was completed, it wasn't very long. It might have been a month or so. And like for him, same like he was saying, I got a couple of calls, and I'm like, I don't know if that's gonna work. And I will say, side note, Trista makes it very, very easy for you to say, that's not going to work for me. And she wants you to be very, very honest with that. She doesn't make you feel bad if that's just not a good fit for your home. And for me, that was great, because I'm very much so, yeah, sure, I can do it. Yeah, sure, send them on. You know, not even thinking like, well, maybe it's not going to work. So Trista does reiterate, like, you know, think about it, make sure it's a good fit. You don't feel like it's being pushed on you.
And Trista is great about that. I'll get the text messages every so often, are you ready for one of our chats? So it's like, okay, sure, Trista, call me. And then we call, and we'll go through the referral, and Trista's very good about picking out details, maybe just a little vague little sentence in there, and Trista's, well, let me find out what that means. Let me see what they're talking about here before we make any more decisions. And then we just kind of talk back and forth and throw ideas at each other of what would make this work and what wouldn't make it work. And Trista called me here a while back for a placement, and everything seemed to be great, but the child had medical needs. And I told Trista, I said, I know this sounds like a great fit, but I have younger children in the house, and this child is, a very severe diabetic. My two little ones come home from school every day with a bag full of candy from the teachers that they're not supposed to get. And I was like, my two would be sneaking candy to this child. And I think I'd be putting this child, I don't think I could keep him safe in my house. Not, that, we couldn't restrict what's here. It's what my younger ones would bring in and give him. And I just think we would be setting ourselves up for a failure, or even a medical emergency that we wouldn't want to happen. So I had to pass on that placement.
Tristan, let me ask you, your office is in Roanoke?
Correct.
And what area do you cover for DePaul? Is it Lynchburg, all the areas? Is there a region? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have a region. We have 8 different offices. So the Roanoke location covers the city of Roanoke, Roanoke County, Salem, this whole area.
Okay.
Botetourt, Franklin County, Martinsville, Danville area.
How do you decide what's a good fit? I mean, what's the criteria?
So it starts with the foster family's conversation with the home finder. They explore all that during the whole home study process, and then once I get that information, really it's a conversation with me and the families. And sometimes that changes. They may come in with a certain set of criteria, this is what I'm looking for, but for reasons like another foster placement in their home, that might change what's a good fit, like the example that Terry just gave. So really it's just an open conversation with the foster family about what's going to be best for their family.
It's definitely not like a cookie cutter approach. If we did that, it wouldn't be beneficial to the children or the families. So we really take each individual case, and ask, what do you need? What's best for you? Does anybody have any other questions?
Is there funding available to help prospective foster parents in
Prepare their homes for foster children and things like that, like, you know, facilities, give rooms for them?
So anything, the approval process, that funding is covered completely through DePaul. But if there are any type of changes that you'd like to make to your home, that would be on the foster parents, their ticket to do that.
Trista, can you talk about the financial support that foster parents have, once a child is in their home? And
Yes, I can.
Terry and Crystal too.
Yeah, so there's, the financial support comes from the local department. It's basically made of two pieces. It's, money from the state, and then there's also supplemental finances that come, and it's based on that child's level of need. So depending on, you know, their strengths and needs, you could get a little more or less to help support you with that child. Childcare, as long as you're working, is always covered. That doesn't come out of your pocket. School, of course, activities and things like that. If there's a reason you're not able to meet that need, we can help with that. But for the most part, that's all going to be covered under, you know, education. Yes, and thank you, Jamie. Medical insurance is provided through Virginia Medicaid.
I think those are all the questions then. Thank you guys so much for being here. And thank you guys so much in the panel.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate you taking your time. Reverend Burch, thank you again so much for sharing your story with us. And just thank you to everybody who came here today and people who joined us online as well. So, thank you. Please help yourselves to food.
Yes, please take lots of food.
Lots of food.
Just want to get your all's names. I was going to use some of the stuff you said.
Okay.
Sure.
It's Terry Bobbitt,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're
Is
welcome.
that T-E?
RRY,
Okay, how do you spell your last name?
B-O-B-B-I-T-T.
B-O-B-B-I-T-T?
Yes,